What is up, party people? It's your man, I Do a Barber, with a full length haircut tutorial. And in this one, we're doing a comb over, down to skin, drop fade style. So I'm starting off with saturating his hair because, as you saw, it was very gangly when he walked in, and I wanted to just get some control of his hair. We talked and consulted about the end goal of what he wants out of his style. You know, what do we want to do with his hair today? Typically we do generally around the same style. Sometimes we'll just adjust it slightly. So that's what the consult was about. And I'm just trying to see how his hair moves here once it has water, because typically people's hair will move a little bit more freely and a little bit better once it's saturated with water, and it can give me a good indication of how easy it will be for him to style at home and how much of a pain in the butt it might be to cut. So as you see, I'm just combing through his hair, just trying to get a good picture of how I can anticipate his hair going. So as you see there, see that little hair sticking up there on the corner. I'm taking that into account. I'm looking at the way he's going to style his hair, and I'm just looking at it. But as you see, I only saturated the top primarily. I didn't saturate the sides, and even if I did, I wouldn't saturate it deeply. So as you see there's a little 360 spin move of his hair before we get into the actual cutting of his hair. So now as you see, I'm pointing to like the crown of his hair, as you see there, and that's really my main focus, is to really take more weight out through the crown rather than take more weight out through the front, just because I can tell just the balance of his head. You can see all of that hair through there, it sticks up quite a bit, and it just kind of throws off the shape of his head. So I want to get that in order. It's typically a lot of styles like this is shorter in the back, longer in the front. So we'll do some over directing to create that forward motion. So now I have my 3.5 blade on, and I'm removing bulk, and I'm basically creating a guideline almost, to a sense, as you'll see here in a second, where I'm using this basically as, this will be my reference when I go in and put in the guidelines below it. So it's almost like I'm putting in the guidelines in reverse, whereas you would see people put them in from bottom to the top. In this video, I'm putting them in from top to bottom. So now I have the 2 blade on, and I'm going right underneath that 3.5, as you see there. Just following the same shape and basically following that line of demarcation that was left around his parietal ridge. As you can see, it's quite heavy, and I'm basically following that shape because that's the way the fade will go. Just remember, when you put in guidelines or whatever you use as a reference, you got to really follow the reference, because that's going to be the one thing that keeps you consistent through the fade. It's just like a traveling guideline. If you're using scissors to cut someone's hair on top, or just doing an overall scissor cut, and you use a traveling guideline, the idea is that it travels as you go through the cut. Now, if you lose your traveling guideline, you're lost. It's just like if you go to a different country and you have a tour guide. If you get separated from your tour guide, you're going to be lost. This is foreign territory for you. You do not know what's going on. So that tour guide is your helping hand, just like a traveling guideline, just like me following the guideline in the shape that was left around his parietal ridge. I'm basically following that, and that is my guide. If I didn't have that, of course, I could just create the guideline straight away from the bottom, but I'm doing this from top to bottom. Sometimes, and guys, you guys might see me cut hair one way on YouTube or use this system on YouTube. I made a video talking about the 5 phase systems that I use. I really have about 7 phase systems that I use, and sometimes I just switch it up, to be honest. Like some clients, one particular phase system might be a little bit easier, and on others it's a little bit different. You know, I have one client that I cut and I only use clippers and a comb. I don't use any guards with him, you know, and that's just how it is. I've cut his hair with guards, but I've noticed me using the clippers is just a little bit easier, quicker, and actually I kind of like the cut better with the clipper and the comb, which actually he's supposed to come in this Friday. I actually think I'm gonna shoot that video with him, so you guys will actually get to see that haircut on YouTube. So now, to keep you guys up to speed, the lever's closed, by the way, which is a 000. My masters are 0 gapped, and I created the first bald line, right? So as you see there, boom, about a 1-inch guideline. Now, 5-0 blade on my detachable blade clipper, the Super ZR. This is not the ZR2, for those of you that are curious. And I'm going right underneath where I left off with that 000. And I'm not going up high into it, as you can see, because we need gradients to this fade. We need gradients. It's a key word. We need some gradients. So that's all I'm doing here. 5-0 right underneath. And of course, you know, right under the 5-0 will be the shaver. But we're not going to do that later. We're going to leave all that little nasty bulk underneath there. We're going to leave that for later with the shaver. Save it. But for now, we'll get into blending out this first panel. So as you see here, I just retraced it a little bit, you know, as you can see there, boom. Retraced it a little bit. I wanted to go just a little bit higher. So as you see there, we're about halfway with the lever. And we're gonna go into reducing bulk to remove this guideline. And this is something that I do all the time. Once I create the guideline, I don't go from bottom to the top. I go from top to bottom and slowly reduce the bulk, because then I can control the balance of the fade. It's ultimately like fading down, but you're fading down with panels along the way versus just either removing bulk or just fading down from top to bottom, which sometimes I fade from top to bottom. I do have some clients where I do it and it's actually a lot quicker. Typically I like doing this with tapers. I like doing this on tapers. I don't necessarily like fading down when I'm doing a full fade, because for me, I just find myself getting lost in it too much. Or I could just probably cut in smaller panels, which I really don't like doing that when fading down, period, on an entire fade, because I just think that sometimes the balance can be a little bit off, and who knows, maybe I need to practice, maybe. But with tapers, I find that I have good success fading down when I do tapers, and the tapers turn out to be pretty fast. So as you see, I'm just detailing now, just making sure that this area is clean and clear before we proceed on. Now, when you're doing this with guidelines, you want to make sure that you're clean and clear before you move on, because what will happen is you will run into those problems that you ignored once you go on to your next step. And even just if you go deeper into the haircut, all of these problems will rear their ugly head. It's almost how people say, you know, when you put a line up on something, it exposes flaws in the haircut. And that is true with this situation, not only just the lineup, but with this situation as well. So lever is open on this Fat Master blade, which is essentially a 2 blade, and I'm going all the way up to that 3.5, because as you can see now, that line of demarcation there at this parietal ridge, it's a lot more heavy. It's a lot heavier now, and I did that intentionally because when I was removing the bulk initially, I didn't know how high I wanted to go and the real placement of the blend, but now I do. So again, starting big, reducing bulk until it's finished. So as you see there, the lever is just slowly closing and slowly closing. And what you will see is this line slowly disappear and slowly disappear. This is what you call blending. So for those of you that are curious, right? Because I get a question a lot about how to detail a fade and things like this. You have to know what each individual blade, guard, lever position does to the hair at any given moment. Once you know this, you can properly go in and detail with no problem and not have any fear about creating another line, putting a hole in the fade, messing up the fade. Because with beginners, I notice a lot of times you guys will mess up detailing a fade, because when you're detailing, pretty much the bulk of the work is done. Now you're just polishing, but that is a crucial point where you can mess up. I've done it before. I am not perfect. Many great barbers that you know have done this before, but of course we all learn from our mistakes. So learn to know what each lever, guard, blade, whatever does to a hair at any given moment. And I know this because I know my clippers. I spent time with my clippers. I know what they look like when you're dealing with different textures of hair. And as you go through a haircut on a particular person, you will make mental notes as to, okay, this does this to his hair. You're making mental notes. And of course, there's no shortcut to this. Experience is the best teacher. You will learn a lot of this through experience, guys. So don't be in a rush, too much of a rush. I mean, I get it. You know, you want to get better faster, but just keep practicing and you will gain this knowledge through experience. So now I'm just detailing. I'm using the corners. I went down lower. And another thing with detailing, like to go back on that, is if you have a problem with it, start bigger and work your way smaller. It's an easy and safe way to not mess up while detailing. Yes, it can kind of waste a little bit of time because you're starting off bigger and working your way smaller, especially if you don't get it right on the first shot. But again, through experience, you will learn. So now 3.5, I'm going up all the way to the parietal ridge. You can see the angle of my blade is going straight up. It is not following the round of his head. It's going straight up because we want to keep the square shape and make sure this is proper looking, because there will be some length on top, and there's nothing worse than having a haircut that has a bad shape where it's not balanced, it doesn't fit the client's head shape. There's nothing worse than that. So now the 2 blade is on, and I'm being very delicate the way I use the 2. I'm using the corner sometimes I'm using the entire blade, and I'm just detailing in there. And I have to go back down with my masters again with the lever open. And as you see, just some areas. As the hair transitions to the back, there's always this little problem where the mastoid area, where you gotta go a little bit higher in some scenarios. And that's what you saw there. So now I'm just using clipper over comb just to remove some of the bulk through the parietal ridge. But we still have to go back with scissors and really take the true bulk away, because it's really hard to tell when the hair is dry. Once the hair is wet, it becomes very elastic, and it expands and stretches. So we'll do that, and you'll see that a little bit later in the tutorial. But clipper over comb, boom, boom, boom. Very, very easy. Clipper over comb is a very easy technique, and I find myself using a lot more clipper over comb lately, just to get through some of these fades, and it's pretty quick. Highly recommend you guys implement this into your game and really use it and practice it consistently. You may not be comfortable at first, but of course, who is the first try, right? But that's why I love the practice of barbering. You get better each rep. At least that's how it should be, guys. Getting better every rep. So I'm doing the same thing on the other side. I'm working my way down slowly. And the this other side of his hair kind of fades differently than the other side. It's kind of weird. I noticed this with his hair this time. You know, I've cut his hair a few times, but this particular time, it was like this side of his hair was a problem. And you could probably notice that if you look closely at just as the hair is being removed, it's not being removed evenly. And this is one of those things where, a little gem for you guys, when you're cutting someone's hair, pay attention as you put the guidelines in, because essentially it's like this. If you use the lever open and create a panel, right, the hair should all be one length, correct? Correct, should. But as you go and create these guidelines, pay attention to how the hair is cutting as you create the guideline. Is the entire panel the same contrast all the way through? If there are light spots, those are areas of concern, and you may not have to do as much work through there. And then the one area is a little bit darker, obviously, you know, you're gonna have to spend a little bit more time there. Or as you start fading down, if you notice, yeah, this was all being reduced with this length, but this little area here is a little bit darker, obviously that's a problem area. And that's what I noticed with this side of his head. But it's okay, because, you know, we'll take our time with this and slowly reduce everything. So again, masters with the Fat Master blade, lever open, going all the way up into that 3.5, and we're gonna work our way small. So as you see there, I'm already closing the lever and I'm getting ready to start removing this bulk. So as you see there, you see exactly, like, look at the contrast of his hair through that panel. As I'm working my way down, it's kind of spotty. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. You have to see these things as you do it. As you do it, you have to pay attention to the hair, not just cutting the hair just to be cutting the hair. You know, if you could see these problems as you're dealing with them, once you recognize it and accept it, you will be able to do and work through this haircut a lot quicker, rather than fighting with this area, because you will one, recognize the problem, and then through two, with experience, you will know how to rectify the problem. Because on this side, as far as the fade, I had to spend a little bit extra time than I did on the other side. It's kind of weird, but that's barbering, right? That's what happens. Like, I'm sure out of all of the heads that you guys have cut, you guys probably have certain clients where you could bust out the fade really quick on one client, but then another client, you got to spend a little bit extra time. And you know these clients, like, you know, you, especially if you do appointments, you see this client's name on the bookings today, you'll be like, oh man, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to spend some time here. Or, ooh, I know if I'm running behind, I can't get this guy out quick. I got to spend the whole time slot, you know. That's just how it is. So as you see now, I've got the masters with the lever open, and I'm using the corners a lot, because obviously that area was pretty much done, but I'm just trying to buff out anything that was left. But like I say, it was just this side of his hair was a pain in the butt today, which I don't know why. I honestly don't know why this side of his hair was a pain in the butt today. And I'm gonna be honest too, another thing, if you're having a problem with, like, let's say one side of the hair or one side of a taper or whatever, and you notice that you're spending too much time there, I always tell people, do something else. Just leave it. Not to leave it and say, hey, that's it, I give up on this haircut, and you're just gonna let them walk out looking crazy. But just go on to do something else. Maybe do their lineup. Maybe do the top of the hair, right? Do something else. Take your eyes off of it for a little bit and then come back to it, because, you know, you can come back to it with a fresh eye, a fresh look, because sometimes you'll get tunnel vision just looking at something for so long. You will think that, man, is this line here, but it's not, right? You might be just chasing lines all over the place. It's almost like a mirage of sorts, where you're constantly chasing something that's not there. This inanimate, I can't even say that word, inanimate. Geez, help me in the comments below. Inanimate object, whatever. You guys get what I'm saying. I can't believe I can't even say that word. But yeah, you want to take your eyes off of it and then just come back. You know, it's like asking for a second opinion in a way, right? One person might have one theory. Yes, it might be a good theory. You may not fully understand it, but then you take on a whole new perspective of someone else that you might be able to grasp a little bit easier. And it's the same thing with taking your eyes off of it for a little bit and then coming back with a new set of eyes. I mean, look, they're your eyes, but your lens is a little bit clear. It's not as foggy, right? You blew on it, rubbed it off with your t-shirt. Now the lens is a little bit clearer. So same thing as the other side, clipper over comb, just to soften up that parietal ridge. And this is all in real time, guys. I didn't speed anything up. This is what the detailed haircuts are for, so you guys can get an accurate picture of what I'm doing when I'm cutting these clients' hair. And sometimes in these detailed haircuts, I try and slow some stuff down, like, so I may not try and work as quick through certain things, so you guys can really get a good understanding, because I know I'm not gonna fast forward this haircut tutorial. Although there is a condensed shorter version of this haircut, if you guys want to see that, it is out there. So now I'm taking the blending scissors and I'm going to come through here and just soften up the weight through the parietal ridge, because on the other side, I'm going to do scissor over finger to connect some of that, and you'll see that a little bit later in the tutorial. But on the left side of his head is a little unnecessary, because that's the shorter length of the comb over. The hair is not combing over in this direction, so there's no need for me to connect long hairs into this. And as you see, I left that hair at the bottom there, and sometimes I do this, guys, sometimes I don't. Some people hate it, some people like it. In some scenarios, I do like it, because it's actually can be quicker, because now all I got to do once the haircut is finished is go back with a 5-0 and then come underneath that with my shaver. And my 5-0 is right, it goes right into my shaver perfectly. So now, as you see, I'm doing scissor over comb, and I'm starting from the crown. I'm going to work my way forward, and we're going to point cut to remove length. So point cutting is very easy. You know, the one thing you need to understand about a lot of the scissor techniques is what type of scissor technique are you using and why you're using the technique. But then the more important thing, more than the why, is what effect will this have on the hair by using this certain technique. Because if you pay attention to my videos closely, I've used a few different types of point cutting. You know, like as you see, I'm coming in at an angle here, point cutting, and this is going to reduce a lot of length. Of course, it's going to add some texture. It's not going to have the hair lay as flat. You know, it'll lay it a little bit softer. But ultimately, for the purpose of me using it, is to remove some length. So me coming in at this angle, I'm reducing a lot of length, as you see there. Boom. Took off about an inch. Now there's another technique of point cutting where it's like deep point cutting, where you come in at a much steeper angle. I really hope you guys have a good grasp of the English language when you're listening to me speak, because I get people that ask me questions on Instagram that I would like to believe they watch my tutorials, but they ask me questions that I know I answer in these tutorials. So it's like, how closely are you listening to these videos? Or maybe you just don't understand some of the verbiage that I use, like, right, like come in at a steep angle, like I would hope you know what that means by me coming in at a steep angle. I hope you grasp the concept of steep and angle. I just thought about that when I used that word. I was like, maybe someone might not understand what steep angle means, especially as a beginner. You probably won't, but if you understand the English language, you can put two and two together. It's easier to decipher what that means if you just use some common sense. Come on, guys, we got to be smarter in 2020. So as you see there, and you see, boom, I'm talking about that parietal ridge area. So now we got to connect it. So as you see there, as that projects out, you see that hair that just sticks out. We got to connect that with the top. So as you see there, I'm going to over direct the hair back, and we're going to remove all of that and connect it on the top, because all of that stuff there was leaving weight at the top. And I'm going to throw something from the textbook at you guys, in the Milady textbook. What creates a line of demarcation? If you don't know the answer to this, shame on you, but this will actually help you even with fading. What creates a line of demarcation? The answer is simple: the weight above it. And if you know that, that will be very easy in handling fades, or even just doing stuff with scissors, how to solve these problems. Because if you have a line, even if you're in your fade, no matter what level of the fade you're in, if you have a line, that line is created by the weight above it. So you need to attack the weight above. So I'm just refining the parietal ridge again with the blending scissors. Just softening it. His hair, thankfully, it sits pretty well. It's not gangly as far as the way it sits or the way it moves. His hair actually moves pretty well. And I guess that's good for him. I mean, obviously, it's not like I'm wearing his hair, right? But it's good for him. And it's good for me too, because it makes my job a little bit easier. Once you think about it, it makes my job a little bit easier. So I'm just softening up here. And as you see here, you see my eyes are fresh, my lens is clear. So now I can come back in here and detail some of this fade. Because I noticed, I was like, man, I just feel like this is getting on my damn nerves. I was like, let me just do something else, right? Let me just do something else. And I was able to come through with a clearer lens and just take out some of those like little dark spotty areas. And even like I was saying, like this side of his head was just being a real pain in the ass today. And I don't know why. Typically this side of his head fades really easy, but who knows? Who knows, guys? Who knows? I have clients where if their hair gets really long and overgrown, it's a little bit tricky, like fading their hair. That's why it's always good as a barber to have your clients come in frequently, because in the interest of time and money, it saves you time, because you have to spend less time cutting their hair and having to tame wild hair. I mean, I love doing big chops and transformation haircuts, but when you have a client whose hair is pretty easy to cut and you got to spend a bunch of extra time cutting their hair, it's not good. And of course, you can't really tell them how to spend their money. You can't be like, yo, you better come in 2 weeks, or you better come in 3 weeks. Like, you can't make them do that. It is what it is. Things happen, but we're the professional, and that's what they look to us for. So, and all this stuff comes with experience, guys. So don't be afraid. Like, this stuff you'll get better over time. Don't get frustrated. You know, you just got to go through some stuff sometimes. So now we're just doing the lineup, and we're being very conservative. We're just doing the box and the little C area. So we're not going to do the front hairline. With his hairline and his hairstyle, it's best that we just keep it natural. And I think a lot of clients, when they have like longer hairstyles, like a lot of the times it's better to just leave it natural, honestly. A lot of the time it's better just to leave it natural. So now, as you see there, you know, it does pop a little bit more. And you'll find even some people that have this type of hairstyle, they'll leave their hairline completely natural. But, you know, we do a little bit of something to him, you know, where it's just spice it up a little bit, you know, where it's just not as boring. Because as you saw, like, it did make a bit of a difference. It did make a difference. So now I'm coming in and I'm just doing a little bit more detail work. Guys, like, unfortunately, you don't get the good camera angle. It's all about me. So now we're gonna do some softening of the top. I'm taking my blending scissors and I'm going right underneath my fingers, and we're just coming in here taking out some of this weight. His hair is pretty thick. Not the thickest hair I've ever seen, but I will say pretty thick. I actually ran into a client whose hair was thicker than his, which I was actually quite surprised. Actually, I felt my clippers bogging down cutting this particular guy's hair. I was like, wow. Like in my Supras, you know, the detachable blade clipper, they're heavy duty, right? They were slowing down going through his hair. I was like, wow, this is a first. I felt my Supras get a little bogged down with this one particular client. So as you see, like, I'm combing through his hair just to feel how soft it is, just to see how it moves, just trying to get a picture of how his hair is laying as I, you know, maneuver my comb through it. And if I feel any heavy sections, I'm removing them. As you saw there was a little long piece. So now I'm going to cross check his hair. You know, I cut it one way and then I'm going to cross check it the other way. And I'm coming through here and I'm removing some weight. As you saw, like, these blending scissors only cut 30% of the hair each cut. So if I have to remove some length, I have to do a lot of cuts with these blending scissors, because I didn't want to reach back and go back and grab the other scissors. And this is the part where, you know, cutting for YouTube, you kind of, you know, work more, at least in this case, because if I was cutting his hair normally, I would have just reached over and grabbed him and did it. But this is YouTube, camera angles, blah, blah, blah. So what you saw me spray there was Glay-Right grooming spray, and it's a tonic. It's like a primer almost, where it prepares you for the blow dry. You know, it's kind of sticky, the product. So if you have a client that doesn't like product, you know, this is good. It's a good primer where you could apply it to like damp hair and like style it that way. And it has a little bit of hold to the grooming spray. So it's a pretty cool little product. I like it. It works, because we are going to apply more product. As I said, you know, that's a primer. So it primes you for the product, almost like a primer on the paint job on a car. You know, they put that like gray primer on it that primes you to put the paint on. You can't just paint over whatever. You got to prime it first. Just like if you paint in your house, depending upon the type of paint you use, you might have to use a primer, especially like an oil-based paint. You have to use a primer first. Same thing, the concept of that grooming spray. So as you saw, I went there with the 5-0 blade on the attachment. Now I went all the way up to where the 5-0 line was. You can't really see it, but I could see it. And I'm coming right underneath this with the shaver. And as you see, like some people are against leaving that little bit of whatever, but sometimes I do it and then sometimes I don't. This time I did. So just is what it is, guys. Sometimes I find it to be quicker, to be honest with you guys. Like sometimes I do find this to be a little bit quicker. So now we're gonna blow dry his hair, and we're creating a little bit of volume, not a ton, but we're styling it diagonal back in a sense. As you see there, I'm adding some volume to the front of his hair, and my blow dryer is following my vent brush. As you see there, it's like it's working in unison practically, and that's what you want to do when you're styling. You want your blow dryer to follow the comb, otherwise you're just combing. You know, this is a vent brush for a reason, so all that air can go through there, you know, from the blow dryer. And as you see there, boom, 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 following, and as you see, you look at the back of that area that was really the cause for concern for me, that crown. I wanted to reduce some of the length through there just to balance out the haircut. And as you saw there, you can see how it's not as poofy in the back. And that's what happens when you create a good shape for someone and cut it right. You know, you can mask certain things, because maybe someone's head is flat in the back. You know, of course you'll leave more weight through the crown to give the illusion that his head is round. And this is the good thing about knowing how to create certain shapes and what all this stuff does to a client's hair, because you can apply that knowledge to that situation. But this is pretty much the style, guys. I'm going to give you the little 360 spin here in a second, but don't forget to subscribe, share this video, leave a comment, let me know what you guys think. I always like cutting this guy's hair. It's pretty fun. Yeah, his hair looks really good on camera, and it fades really easy. You know, I can honestly like cut his hair, do all the fade and cut in the top in probably like 25 minutes. His hair is really easy to work with, but of course it's different on YouTube. So, like I said, don't forget to subscribe, share this video, like, get active in the comments. It's been your man, I Do It, signing out, and I will holla.